All right, everybody, this is the last lesson in F1. We're going to look at applications of set theory, and we're going to be focusing again on Venn diagrams and problems involving like numbers that we're going to have to sort out. We're going to put into each of the categories. Sometimes there are going to be two sets that we are considering. Sometimes there are going to be three sets. And honestly, the three sets are very common on provincial exams. So these are questions that come up all the time. So make sure that you understand how to solve problems like this. So we're just going to be running through three examples and we're going to be answering whatever the question is that goes along with it. So the first example says there are 900 students at a high school that are involved in sports, art, or music. 100 of the students are in all three, 277 in sports and music, 48 are in art only, and then, you can read all of the other numbers there as well. So the question is, how many students are only in sports? So what we are going to do is we're going to label our three sets. So we have S for sports, A for art, M for music. And it doesn't matter where you put the letters necessarily. Just make sure that you are using proper letters to label what the different sets are. So the one that I always like to start with is I like starting with the one that are in all three. That's usually the easiest one. This is the one that goes into the middle, okay? Because it is where all three overlap. So there are 100 that are in all three programs. So we've already used that information. 277 are in sports and music. Well, we can't, we can actually, because we know that 100 are in all three of them. So what that means is the ones that are only in sports and music are 277 minus the 100 that we've already put in the middle. So that is 177 that are in sports and music. Okay, so that's my number 2 that I did. 48 are in art only, so there's no crossover between sports and music. So we can put 48 in that circle there. 265 are in music and art. Well, we already know that we've already used 100 of those. So if we do 265, subtract the 100 that we've already had, that leaves us with 165. That's going to go in art and music. 500 are in music altogether. Well, we've already used 100, 177, and 165 on that. So if we subtract those from the 500 that there are in total, 100 minus 165 gives us 58. So there are 58 that are only in music. And then 210 are in sports and art. So again, we've already used 100 of those. So there are 110 that are left over. So 210 subtract 100. Now, we have all of our circles filled up except for the one that are only in sports. But we know that there are 900 students altogether. So if we take 900 and we subtract each of the numbers that are in my Venn diagram, that will leave us with the leftover. So minus 177, minus 48, minus 165, minus 58. When you do that, the answer is 242. So there are 242 students that are only in sports. So again, it's about reading what each line of information gives you. See if you can put that number into the diagram right away. If not, you might have to do like a simple calculation to figure out the remaining amount. But that's pretty much all that we are doing in this lesson. So moving on to example number 2. It says, at a large city school, there are 275 students taking math, 235 taking science, and 189 taking both. How many students are there in the school? So we're going to assume that they are taking either one or the other. There's going to be nobody that's kind of left behind that isn't taking either class. But again, I always like starting with the one that we can put in the very middle, the one that is taking both. Okay, so we know that 189 are taking both. If you want to write that using set notation, the number of students taking math and science is 189. Now we have other information. We know that in general, there are 275 students in math class, and we know in general, there are 235 students taking science. So let's start with the math. The number of students that are taking math is 275. But we know that 189 of them are also taking science. So we want to figure out the number of students that are taking math that are not taking science. And that's just the number of math students minus the number of math and science students. Okay, so we know that that's 275 minus 189 gives me 86. So there are 86 students that are just taking math. And then we can do the same thing for science. So we know that the total number of science students is 235. So the number of students that are taking science that are not taking math is the number of science in total minus the number of students that are taking both. So 235 minus 189 gives me 46. So there are 46 students that are only taking science. The question is asking how many students are there in total. Well, all we have to do is add these three numbers together. The total is 86 plus 189 plus 46. And when you add those together, you get 321 students. All right, so make sure when you are solving a problem like this that you are always answering the question that is being asked of you. Example number 3 is talking about how grade 12 students communicate with their friends. And all of these numbers here are in percentages, but we can just treat them like they're regular numbers. We don't really have to worry about whether they are a number or a percentage or whatever. So we're going to consider cell phone, texting, and social media, and then there are some combinations of all of those. So again, we're going to draw our box. We're going to make a Venn diagram. We have 3 different sets that we are considering. So we're going to draw 3 circles, and they are going to overlap because there are overlaps in the information that we are given. So again, we want to start with the very middle and work our way outwards. So we're going to start with the fact that 12% use all 3 forms of communication. So all 3, we're going to put 12 where all 3 circles intersect one another. 19% texted and used social media. Oh, I didn't even label this yet. We're going to call this C for cell phone, T for texting, and S for social media. Okay, so 19 texted and used social media. We already have 12 that we have used, so there is 7% left over that will go there. 18% use the cell phone and social media, so cell phone and social media. We've already used 12, so there is 6% left over there. 56% use the cell phone and texted. Again, we've already used 12% here, so there's 44% left over. And now we're going to consider each individual circle. So 34% use social media. We've already used 6 plus 12 plus 7 is 25%. So 34 minus 25 is 9%. That's left over there. 76% texted. Well, we've already used 44 plus 12 is 56 plus 7 is 63. So we have 13% left over here. And 66% use the cell phone. We've already used 44 plus 12 is 56 plus 6 is 62. So there's 4% left over there. Now, there is one other piece of information that is not included here. When you add up all of the percentages, it should add up to 100%. So if we add up all of these numbers, do they add up to 100%? So pause the video, see if you can add these numbers up on your own, and then try to figure it out. But when we do add these numbers all together, they actually only add up to 95%. So what that means is there are 5% of people that do not use a cell phone, text, or social media. So we should also be including that because it is part of our universal set that we are considering. These people, they are grade 12 students, they just don't happen to fall into any of these categories. So kind of watch out for that because sometimes your numbers might not add up to the total that the question is giving you. Now we're going to answer the question, what are the percent of students that only use the cell phone, that only texted, that only use social media? Well, the only ones that used the cell phone was 4%. The only ones that used texting was 13%. The only ones that used social media is 9%. We have one final example here. It's another high school question, very classic question that they ask, usually involves high school students or grade 12 students. So they've started a campaign to encourage students to use green transportation methods to and from school. They conducted a survey of 750 students, and these are the results. So we're going to be considering transit, cycling, and walking. So again, we're going to make our Venn diagram here. We have 3 categories. They are going to overlap with one another. So we have transit T, cycling C, walking W. Those are going to be our 3 categories. All right. Now again, we want to start in the middle and work our way outwards. So how many use all 3? Well, it's right here. There are 20 students that use all 3, so 20 is going to go in the very middle. 35 students walk and cycle. So walking and cycling is here. So we're looking at this overlap right here. We've already used 20 students, so there are 15 that are left over here. 80 students walk and use transit. So walking and transit is here. We've already used 20 students. So 80 minus 20 is 60. 100 students cycle and use transit. We've already used 20, so there are 80 students that are left over here. There are 370 students in total that use transit. We've already used 80 plus 80 is 160. So when we subtract that, there are 210 students left over there. 445 students cycle or use transit. So what that means is when we add up the cycling and the transit, these 2 circles should add up to 445. So this one, we're going to take 445 and subtract all of the numbers that are in the transit and the cycling. And again, just make sure you are not double subtracting. For example, this 80 falls in both categories. We only want to subtract it the one time. So we're going to subtract all of the transit plus this extra cycling number gives us 60 students. So 60 is going to go in here. And then the last one, 265 students walk or cycle. So again, we're looking at these 2 circles here. So we're going to start with 265 and subtract all of the cycling numbers and also subtract this extra walking number here. So when we do that, we get 30. So there are 30 that go in here. Now again, talking about do these numbers add up to the total? Well, we have 750 students altogether. So there could be some leftover because I don't think all of the numbers in this Venn diagram add up to 750. So if we add all of these numbers together, we have 210 plus 80 plus 60 plus 60 plus 20 plus 15 plus 30. When you add all of those together, you get 475. Clearly doesn't add up to 750. So if we subtract 750 minus 475, there are 275 students left over that do not use green transportation. But the question is, how many do use it? There are 475 students that use one of the 3 green transportation methods that were done in the survey.